Actually, this is a gift to Penn State. Possibly. Possibly.
This one?
The whole thing.
Oh, this whole pile?
Yeah. The whole pile. This is Bow Bridge in Central Park. I have a photograph of that with absolutely a huge amount. It was a gay lesbian meeting in Central Park years ago. They went to with a lady friend, and it was fantastic. But this bridge had, well, like here are two figures on the bridge, but it was just like a band of a colored snake moving along, people to people. I don't know why it didn't collapse. And they were all going to the sheep meadow where they had this huge meeting, and it was just very interesting. Here's one I just repainted. This is a print, and I didn't like this thing angling off that way, so I had it move down this way, and then I added an inch or two this way, and it was much better. But I couldn't wake her up now; she's still sleeping.
At least you tried, you know.
That's it. People walking. It was a long title to write. Imagine writing that 265 times. Man and woman Luxembourg.
It's rough. Not painting it 260
Well,
times.
painting it was easy.
That's easy.
Yeah. Here's a nice one. Sometimes you have fun doing things. Here's an interesting.
Where's that one at?
It's carefully balanced. Notice how this little ash can just holds its place on the left. Otherwise, without it, it'll all be crowded to the right.
Oh, we saw that one earlier too.
Pardon?
We saw that one earlier.
Yeah,
The disorder on the desk.
the picture
Of your granddaughter.
Which one?
This one.
of the,
Yeah.
The baby?
yes,
You want me to hold it up?
yeah.
All right, this is little Claire. Claire was abandoned by her parents when she was a day old in a basket on a step in this large southern city in China because of the policy of one child per family, except for certain agrarian regions. And then she was taken to an orphanage where she was raised for 6 months and then sent out to a peasant family some 60 miles from the city who took care of her for almost a year. Anne wanted to adopt a child. She had heard about the program in China, and they investigated Anne, who is unmarried, and a great chef. She's had the cover of Food and Wine magazine many times, and finally they okayed her, and she went to China with a friend and picked up the child, went out to the family that had raised her for 1 year, and embraced the woman and told her she would send pictures of the child as the child was growing up, etc., etc. So anyway, that's it. The child is extraordinarily intelligent. She's marvelous. She goes to a nursery in the city where she's fantastic. I mean, I haven't seen a 3-year-old child that is so bright and alert and whatnot. And actually, let's just see her. It's a beautiful photograph of her walking across a bridge in a local park here. And she's a tough cookie too, I'll tell you that. Fortune cookie. But anyway, so much for Claire. You're a beautiful girl, you know that?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'll tell you who you remind me of. It's a very, very strange thing. You remind me of my mother when she was young.
Really?
She was a very attractive woman, yeah. Very good-looking woman when she was old, too. But like many people in her time period, she was born, I think, in 1892. And when she was 13, she graduated from school. And she was the valedictorian of her graduating class. And she turned 13. The next day, she was in school getting her working papers to go to work. And that was it. And that was what my parents were sons and daughters of immigrants in New York, fleeing from Europe. They both came from Austro-Hungary, which was a combination of those two countries. My father went to work when he was 9. And there were 10 other children in his family. They lived in 2 rooms, and he slept on the floor. And he would tell me of how one night a rat crawled in his nightshirt. He rolled over and killed it. And this is it. This story is not unusual. Millions of people experience that, coming over with not a cent to their name or very little, and then trying to find the good life here. Really incredible. At any rate, he used to tell me lots of stories about his childhood. Incredible stories. He worked for an undertaker when he was a kid, and the undertaker played a practical joke on him. He said, "Charlie's asleep in the back room in a chair. Now he's a heavy sleeper. Wake him up. Give him a good shake." And Charlie was a corpse, and Charlie fell down and scared the bejazzers out of my father. And my mother worked in the garment district, and the building right next to her where she worked was a famous fire called the Triangle Waist Shirt Fire. What had happened was, it was a factory, many stories high, and many of these girls from immigrant families worked there as seamstresses, working there, making clothing. And the bosses, there were fire escapes on the outside, a door leading to a fire escape from every floor. But the bosses, fearing that the girls would steal some of the garments they made, had the doors locked. And the fire broke out, and 118 girls died in the fire. They jumped from the windows, and all of these girls came from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And in those days, when there was a funeral in a tenement house, they would have, they still do this in Paris in some areas, they have the door to the stairway going up to the apartments draped in black curtains lying, and the entire East Side had that. And as a result of that fire, the unions there was a tremendous surge of unions, and the International Ladies Garment Workers Union was founded, and things changed somewhat from these sweatshops that my mother worked in. It was a part of their childhood. But I think you know too about Rose's family and whatnot, and I don't know about your family when they came over, or if they were found here in the trees.
They found me.
Anyway, very quiet and lovely in this building, isn't it? This church was built in 1889, and I was very fortunate to be able to get this. I wanted a church, and I missed out on getting a very beautiful church some 15 miles from State College. And then I saw this when it was going to be on the market, but it was up for bids, and I didn't think I could afford it. So I forgot about it. I was at a party one night, and someone said, "Hey, there's a church for sale. You're looking for a church in Lamont." I said, "I've seen it. I don't think I can afford it." He said, "No, it's in the newspaper. The price is $5,000. I said, "What?" I rushed to the realtor the next morning, and we were writing up the sale, and suddenly there was a phone call. One of the salesmen had just sold the church to someone who had seen it, a lumberyard that wanted to tear down the tower and build apartments for students here. Fortunately, zoning would not permit that, and so they were stuck with this church building, and I offered them $500 for their right to buy, and they took it, and that was it. And I had the church then, and it was wonderful. I lived here for a year until I got the house next door, and it was fun living here too. Really, really great. And it has a bell I can ring anytime I'm happy or unhappy or what. Cast in Philadelphia in 1856, and the floors are made of cherry. And the interesting thing was when I was I put in storm windows, and then I started to insulate the space between the ceiling and the roof. And the insulators assumed that it was only about 1.5 foot space, and they kept on pouring this insulation material in, and it never stopped. And then finally they investigated and found out there was a huge attic up there, and it's filled with insulation, so the place is really cozy, doesn't use very much oil, and very comfortable. And when I first got it, it was beautifully empty. Now it's filled with thousands and thousands of works of art. Really, it's 25 years of work. Let's see, I bought it in, oh wait a minute, I bought it in '68. It's 33 years of work in here. It's a lot. Anyway, each drawer is magical. You pull out something and you never know what you're going to find. Let's see. I know what to show you. Miscellaneous drawer. This is an early lithograph. It was done in 1936. I was 12 years old, and it's of a gang of workers, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, during the Great Depression. Men were given jobs, unemployed men were given jobs, and that's one of the things. It's 45 years ago. Wait a minute, no, what am I saying? 65 years ago.
So were they working in your neighborhood? Or how did you
Yeah.
get to see them?
Sure, I saw them there. Let's try another try. These, when I was 15, after high school, there was the WPA gave work to artists. They allowed them to, for example, teach courses. And I was about 15 when I did this drawing of this beautiful black male model with white hair. And here's another one of him. That's the only work I have from that period. In high school, I used to illustrate, well, here's a poem by Richard Avedon, and I did a woodcut, and that illustrates the poem. Avedon, as you know, is the great photographer. Now here is my kind of view, an early view on capitalism. That was done 1948, 53 years ago. I'll tell you a story about this. when I was using my GI Bill, I went to Paris, and I had 3 years of GI Bill left, which would give me support. And I went to the Académie de la Grande Chaumière, and I had to sign up for a class. In Paris, the Academy, all art schools, will have the class meets 5 days a week. On the first day, the monitor takes care of the class. The second day, the teacher comes in and gives criticism. The professor comes in and gives criticism. And then the artist works again on the art student works again on the work, and the professor comes in at the end of the week. Anyway, I did several paintings of this beautiful nude model. And the next day, the professor came in and he looked at the painting and he said, "Mais qu'est-ce que vous faites ici? Vous êtes peintre. What are you doing here? You are a painter." And taking him at his advice, I never went back to class. And that was it. However, the GI Bill, the officials wanted to make sure that nobody was goofing off, and they would want an attendance sheet signed every day by all GI students that were in the academy. But most of these artists, these student artists, some of them were goofing off, of course, and having a great time in Paris. This was in the 40s, right after the war, late 40s. But some were working in their studios. They were painting like I was. And we didn't want to come into class unless we wanted to work from the model. So what we did, each person would have a copy of a list of all the students. And it was his turn that week to come in there and sign a duplicate list, a new list, forging the signatures. And since we were artists, we could do pretty good forgery. And that's what we did. Never went back to class. So that was it. Someone was reproducing works of mine and selling them as posters. Another one. This is actually a small print, but the print is just about this big, but it's blown up, and it makes a fairly interesting large image. However, sometimes you get people that do things that are kind of dishonest. Here's an outfit that still exists today that reproduced an early lithograph of mine, and not only did they reproduce the lithograph, but they reproduced the signature in pencil, the title in pencil, and many people, I've had over the years, many people calling us and saying, "We bought this print of yours called November 1979 and signed, etc., etc. What's its value?" And we tell them it's just a reproduction. And that's it. You don't do something like that. You don't reproduce a signature. Very dishonest thing to do. I assume it's, maybe it was just a mistake, but you never know. Here's an early work, which I'll show you. Quite different. My early works were these. This is an etching. It's the first time I've looked at this in years. And God, it's beautiful. Beautiful etching. It's an aquatint, actually. The edition size was 35. It has a haunting quality. There's always, here's another etching called Park Group. As you can see, I was very partial to corpulent mothers and their offspring.
Why is that such a common subject in
Pardon?
Why is that such a common subject in a lot of your
Why is it a
paintings?
common subject? I guess it's something we always like. Think of all of the pictures of the baby Jesus and his mother. In all religions, there seems to be all, most anyway. But these are old things. I don't even know what's in here. Well, this isn't too good, but I'll show it anyway. Because you can't work on a big print. Look at the size of this thing. Anyway, I don't like this anymore, but as long as I pull it out. Oh, here's something you may not be able to see, but at one time in my career I was very partial to angels. And the title of this print is called Angel. It's an etching. These are some of my old works. Here's a strange lithograph. What's the title? Let's see if there is a title. It's called Three Dogs. And 1, 2, 3. I haven't looked at these in years. But these are early Altmans. This was a very popular print. It's called Three Trees. Yeah. And of course, the markets interested me enormously. And here's one of a market woman. She looks like she's not too happy, though. This is an interesting one, called the Esplanade. It's an etching. The interesting thing about this is probably just one plate, and by inking up different areas at the same time, let's say this kind of olive green, and then this kind of gray green down here, you can get some different colors, but you have to design the plate so it can be inked properly by hand.
Why the fascination with markets?
My father was a market man. Oh, he went to work selling fruits and vegetables at a very early age. In fact, when he was 12, he rented a horse and wagon, and he was driving this horse and wagon across the Brooklyn Bridge. This is in the 1890s or the early 1900s, and the horse dropped dead. When I was a kid, I used to see dead horses lying in the street. This was in the 20s. They would lie there until someone hauled them away, and usually my dad would take me down to the market on a Sunday when he didn't work, and I would see several corpses of horses lying there. They'd haul them away the next day. They worked an animal until it died. Like if the horse was a little weak, they didn't care, and boom, plop down, gone. Anyway, he rented a horse and wagon, and he sold fruit and vegetables, and the horse dropped dead on the Brooklyn Bridge, and the policeman said, "What are you doing with this horse and wagon, sonny?" Usually with an Irish accent. He said, and my father said, "I'm delivering it to my father." And he lied, of course, because he wasn't allowed to work at 12. I haven't seen some of these prints. Here's another market etching, quite different from the work I do today.
Did you spend a lot of time in the markets when you were younger?
Oh yeah, I worked for a man that was a peddler when I was a kid. I used to carry women's packages up to their homes. And there's another early. These are prints I haven't seen for years. I haven't even seen these for years. Don't pull out this drawer. I know what this was. I was arranging this for a show at Penn State, which never came off, and a possibility of having a show of the early work. Some of these you can't see. They're too difficult to see. I'm looking for things that are rather interesting. These are rare Altman prints. Nobody around here would have them. Another market. These are all markets. Or I began to do the parks. Sometimes they're funny. Particularly this well-nourished character right over there. Another one. Now here's one that was kind of famous in its time, coming up. I just saw it. It was reproduced. It's called Freeze. Very hard to see probably on the film. I'll show you if I have it. Oh. This is the first state of a plate that was commissioned by the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I don't have the other one here. Maybe it's down below. Anyway, this was way back in the 50s. And the museum was very kind to me, and they bought lots of my work, which helped. This is a newspaper reader, also an early etching.
How long did you live in New York?
I was born in New York in 24, and I lived there until the war, and then came back after three years in the Army, and then used my GI Bill in New York for a couple of years, went to school there, and North Carolina, Black Mountain College, which was a great school, fantastic, historically. I can tell you a lot about it. And then I went to France for 3 years for the remainder of my GI Bill. And I enjoyed Paris very much. My oldest son was born there. And then finally, I didn't go back again to Paris until I had a senior Fulbright in '64. And then I started going there every year, and I worked there every year for 17 years until 2 years ago. I love Paris. It's a great, great town. We just saw this. Yes. I see. Okay, I'll show you one more here, which is a very beautiful print. It's called Five Figures. It's an etching. A soft ground etching. It's very complex to explain what a soft ground etching is. Excuse me while I scratch my nose. That's the original print of a reproduction I showed you. Much richer than the reproduction. Okay, let's see if we can close this without... Museums where they would have a drawing by, let's say, a great artist like Michelangelo, and then on the other side they'll have another drawing of his. So what they do is they frame it so that the thing can be seen on both sides, and expose it on a wall where you can see both drawings. Because art, paper was expensive in the 16th century, 15th century, And I don't know what's in here. Curious. High school drawings. Some of which I won't show you. Let's see. going to show you this. Oh, well, I'll show it anyway. What difference does it make? A nude. On the other side, this must be classwork from Cooper Union. Oh, here's another drawing, lithograph when I was 12. A subway train in New York. This is an illustration from a school magazine. It's a story on coal miners. Believe it or not, coal miners used to interest me very much, and I would do all sorts of coal mine disasters. But this goes way, way back. Way, way back. A drawing from life class. Nothing on the other side. So I've got all sorts of treasures in here. Sometimes something that I haven't seen myself for umpteen years. I don't think you can see it in your camera, but it's a beautiful drawing. Going way, way, way back. No date on it. Nothing on the other side. Wait, yes, there is a date. No, doesn't give the date. You can't see this, it's too light. The drawing of somebody and his lover in bed. Book I illustrate in Paris by Sholem Aleichem, the Jewish writer. And these are the original drawings, and they're highly stylized. It involves the story of a family that immigrates to the United States. Here are two corpulent women embracing, and I think they're in Holland in this particular illustration. This is an illustration in which I don't know whether you can see this. The little boy is selling a drink called kvass in Russia. And every time he takes a drink himself, he fills up his bowl with water. And he keeps on selling it. And finally, the bowl is practically all water, and he's selling this. And his angry customers, after buying the bowl, are attacking him, you see. And then in another time, this boy is selling something else, a kind of sneezing powder, and you can see all the peasants in the town are sneezing. And then another time, the boy is drawing a big foot on the ground, and then one of his neighbors, who has big feet, comes over and sees it, and she's very upset, thinks he's mocking her. This book was published in Paris in the year 1950. And this is a very interesting drawing. It's of a pogrom, destruction of the synagogue, as you can see. Flames, and the people are being beaten and killed. I guess this isn't open. Yes, these wealthy people in the theater, and I must admit I was kind of opposed to rich capitalists. It looks like he has indigestion, about to burp.
Why were you so opposed to the rich capitalists?
Pardon?
Why were you so opposed to the rich capitalists at such a young
because,
age? It seems to be a theme here.
Everybody was. This was first prize fine pen. I won first prize at the Macy's Department Store Art Show. Group 1, first prize. And I was 16 years old when I did this. I graduated in February 1941, and that was it. The prize winner. Damn, so much shit in here. Yeah.
When did you?
The
what-
war was, well, I was
in 1840?
16 when I graduated, and 2 years later, I was 18 and the war began. The war began in December 41, and I was in the Army in 43,
I didn't realize you were that young.
44. No, I was in, wait a minute, let's see. I was in the Army in 43, 19, 18, 19.
What did you do for those 2 intervening years?
I had a scholarship to the Art Students League. The Art Students League offered 5 scholarships to students in New York, and I got one. I was the only boy. 4 others went to 4 girls at Washington Irving High School, which had a superb art program, fantastic art program. And but I never met any of the girls, by the way. I didn't know who they were or anything about them or what happened to them. And I went to the league. I graduated in the winter. We had winter graduation and summer graduation. The high school I went to had 10,000 students. And I can show you the high school magazine if it's interesting. I think I have some right on my desk. Let me just put these down and we'll see if I can show you the type of work that was done in this high school this year. And then the next year we didn't have very much money, so we had a little plate like that. And in this magazine, which was published in spring of 1940, I had a lot of work. I was the associate art editor. There were 10,000 boys in this high school. And here, I love the coal mine. And this I did at 15 and 16. These are just drawings of imaginary disasters. I had seen motion pictures like How Green Was My Valley and other coal mine pictures. But you can see this, here's all of this double spread page. It's just of miners. Here's a mine disaster, they're bringing out the body, and totally imaginary. Now, I'll show you some others. It was an unusual high school. Here's another story, illustrated by Harold Altman again. Coal mine disaster, another one, in the same magazine. So you can see everybody was coal mine crazy in this. The Black Queen, and there's another illustration here too. Here are some other coal mine illustrations, disaster. In fact, I think there's even another one in this magazine that I did. And I was also, and etchings here. This is when I was 16. Drawings of working men. And this is a story by one of my fellow students named James Baldwin, illustrated by Harold Altman, called These Two. It's about 2 young men that rob a store, and you'll see and kill somebody, kill a cop or whatever. Anyway, then you go further on in here, story. Well, I can tell you a sad story that occurred. Toward the end of my 3-year stay in Paris as a student on the GI Bill, I lived in an apartment that a friend got for me. It had no electricity. Many apartments didn't have electricity. And to get electricity, you had to apply for it. And I heard that also you might have to bribe somebody. So when I went to the electric company and filled out an application to the authorities there for getting electricity in my apartment, they told me it would take 6 months. Well, living in the dark, not having it, ridiculous. So I said, oh yeah, and I had my money already in my pocket, all folded up to give the guy as a bribe. And I took it out and I put it on the table in front of him he said, what are you doing? Like that. He put his hand over and he slid it off on the other side. I got my electricity the next day. You bribe somebody, you do it quietly, you don't let anybody see it. But Paris, the area I lived in was notorious for prostitution. And at the time, a senator, a woman, had managed to put a ban on the houses of prostitution, the bordellos. And it threw the girls out on the street. They weren't going to stop prostitution. Prostitution has existed for thousands of years and will continue to exist, particularly in these Latin countries, anywhere. But at any rate, the girls used to line up down the street in front of this hotel in order like this, where they would simply, in physical order, like tall, medium, and whatnot. And at the same time, the Republican Guard, which are these beautiful gold-helmeted soldiers in blue and white uniforms on horses, would come parading down the street on their horses to go about a mile or two to the opera, where they stood guard and ceremonial guard. And as they were walking down the street one day, the girls were out in front of their hotels, doorways where they would take their customers. And all three girls were standing there in this military formation, size, the tallest, the medium, and as the guard went by, they snapped to attention, and they placed their hands in salute fashion over their pudendas, over their pubic areas. And it was so funny, I wish I had had a camera, but I didn't. I did take photographs of them occasionally where I would be, let's say, 20 feet, they would be about 20 feet away from me, and I would shoot the camera at them. I would aim 20 feet this way, and then I turn the camera around, and I get them. And then there used to be, because one of the things that happened when you had the girls in whorehouses was that they would have to pass the visit. The term passer la visite. A doctor would come in and examine them for venereal disease, and there are many paintings and etchings by Toulouse-Lautrec, by Degas, of these women being examined, and standing in line and things like that. And so they would try to get a hold of them, catch them, and haul them in, possibly to have them examined, also to shake them down. When I say shake them down, get money from them. Cops are notorious, particularly in Paris, like that. So anyway, when they sensed that the Black Maria, which they called panier à salade, salad basket, that's the kind of colloquial name they gave, was coming, they would rush away. And I was coming home with my wife, and the panier à salade was coming, and one girl, my wife was on my right side, one girl grabbed my left arm, and I walked with the two women, one my wife and the other a French whore. And they didn't bother us, and then when we got 2 blocks away, she said, "Merci, monsieur, dame. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs." And she left. That was it. So I saved her from a night in jail, But it was important for them to be taken in because, they could have venereal disease and not know it, or could be passing it on to other clients and things like that.
I don't know what they have now, whether, since I don't patronize the shops, I have no idea. But it's called the oldest profession, you know, being a harlot. The world's oldest profession. It's true. Anyway, during the war, I've seen a lot of that too. I'll tell you what happened during the war. This is interesting. I was in Verdun, which is right near the front, and there was a whorehouse in the middle of the town. Most civilians were gone because the fighting was too close and whatnot. But this was not in a fighting area, but it was still a war zone. And there was a whorehouse there, this big 3-story house. And right in front of the whorehouse were 2 lines of soldiers, one coming from the north direction, the other coming from the south. One line were white troops, the other line were black American troops. We even had our own segregation installed in a French whorehouse. It was really incredible. As you went in, there'd be a little card table with 2 American medics, you know, soldiers who are in the medical corps, and they'd be handing out condoms for use on for the prostitutes, things like that. But that was it. It was incredible. Anyway, I was in Europe for over 2 years, from June to was it 2 years? Wait a minute. No, I got there at 44, June of 44, and I was there for a year and a half. Yeah, because went back in December of 45 when the war was over, and the Japanese had surrendered. We were about to go to Japan. But this is interesting as far as I was concerned. I could have been put in the infantry, you know, might have gotten killed. Instead, I was at Cooper Union, and one night they were having a voluntary lecture, if you wanted to go see it. Someone's going to talk on camouflage, you know, hiding things from the enemy and things like that in battle. So I attended the lecture, and then when I was drafted into the Army at 18, they asked my background, and I said, I had extensive camouflage training at Cooper Union. And they put me on this crazy outfit consisting mostly of Hollywood set designers. They got them all in because the idea of camouflage was ridiculous. It was like a fake tree stump, and suddenly the top goes up and I go out with a rifle and shoot somebody. I mean, no, it wasn't that. In fact, one of the most interesting stories I heard, and I don't know whether it's true or not, I know we had set up 3 dummy airfields in Normandy with fake planes on it. And one German plane came over and strafed the field because the German Air Force was not they were not doing much anyway. They couldn't go against the Americans. But 3 damaged Allied bombers landed there and were destroyed, and the men were killed. So we abandoned those fields. And one of the things that we did, they used to make dummy airplanes out of canvas and wood and have them there. But I heard this story that in England, the English had set up these dummy field parks where there were dummy tanks and dummy trucks. And a German plane came over and dropped dummy bombs on it as a joke. A really wonderful story. It was probably true because there was this, in the Air Corps anyway, particularly in World War I, there was this sense of gentlemanly conduct. Like when an American ace or a French ace were shot down, the Germans would come over to the airfield where he was based and drop bouquets of flowers. This actually happened. And they were like knights, you know, knights of old. But at any rate, so we had this Irish linen, lots of it, And it was extremely valuable, you know, because the French had been through 4 years of war, and the economy was shot. Nobody was manufacturing cloth, things like that. And that, on the black market, those rolls of linen were worth a fortune. I got a hold of a roll, and I hid it until we liberated Paris. And I took my roll of Irish linen and went to 25 Rue des Grands Augustins, where Picasso lived. And I walked up and knocked on the door, and his secretary, the Spanish poet Sabartes, opened the door. And Picasso was not there, at least that's what he told me. And I was giving him my gift, and I had burned my hand in the kitchen dipping my mess kit in boiling water, and I had bandages on my hand, and Sabartes said to me, "Oh, you're wounded. You were wounded, you know, in the war." So I didn't want to tell him I burned it in the kitchen. So I said, "It's nothing." You know, anyway, he spoke for about 15 minutes, and I never got to see Picasso. But 5 years later, when he was getting the medal, an award from the Soviet Union for some work he had done, I did get to see him. And I met Chagall there. I have 24 photographs of Chagall that I took in color slides of him talking, gesticulating. I met Miro, I met Léger, met a lot of great artists. But the pictures of Chagall are valuable, actually. I should give them to a museum or do something with them. I don't know what. Very interesting, because he's telling stories. He's in his 90s. I took him. We worked at the same shop, you know, doing lithographs at Morleau. It was wonderful. Monsieur Chagall. Anyway, so much for that. I'll show you something, Dad. Here's a kid. I think I showed it to you, didn't I?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that weird?
What is that?
It's a bar of soap. When I go away to Paris, I'd close up the place, and the poor mice would have nothing to eat, and they would gnaw on the soap, in the soap dish. See, this is bar soap. Incredible. Beautiful. They're really artists. It looks like a great bug, you know, doesn't it? This I showed to, I showed you this, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where's Asa? Here. I was cooking my clam one night, and my dozen clams. Look what I found in there. No clam, but little crab that had eaten up the clam. And that's it. He died in the fire. So I say.